My name is Nicholas Bryan. I'm the CEO of France Digital. France Digital is the largest startup organization in Europe with 1,300 startups and 100 VCs. And our primary focus is to build a strong tech ecosystem here in Europe. And I have the pleasure to introduce an absolutely fantastic panel on deep tech and fintech with 4 distinguished panelists. I want you to give them a big round of applause. Egle Nimikšyste is coming from Lithuania, and she's chairing the Blockchain Center in Vilnius. Please, a big round of applause for Egle. Carlos Kuskowski is a big bad banker. He's working with BBVA in Spain, and is running their new digital business, and is a blockchain specialist. He has written many books on the topics. Big round of applause for Carlos, please. Andre Roth is the $400 million baby in the room. He's a campus manager at UiPath, the leading Romanian unicorn and a specialist in robotics. Please give a big round of applause for our friend Ray. Nemanja Petrovic is coming from Serbia. Is the Chief Business Development Officer of Solelos and is a blockchain fanatic. You will soon hear about him. So, guys, are you happy to be here? Please take the microphones. They are not happy to be here. They are very excited. So it's absolutely fantastic. So our panel today is about fintech and how we can foster the deep tech ecosystem here in Europe. In a few words, each of you, how would you put our ecosystem, our European ecosystem, on the map compared to the US and China? Do you think we are lagging behind, or are we way ahead? What are your thoughts about that? Carlos, you travel a lot. Maybe you want to start?
Well, I used to travel a lot to San Francisco, New York, and other countries. And for me, we have really smart people, really good engineers, business models, businessmen. The challenge for me is that we are not a unique market like US. When you launch a company in US, you can reach all the country. Here it's not easy to grow and scale in Europe. So for me, this is one of the challenges.
Okay, Egle, what are your views on this?
So I think if I have to choose just one word to describe this, so I think it will be we are competing. We are really competing with the US and China. And our strongest part is that we have really smart people. Our challenge is that we don't have a mindset that the US startups have. And we still think that sometimes Spain's market, Germany's market, or even the UK's market is enough. But if you want to compete globally, it's not enough. And you have to be global from day one. So this is the challenge that we have to face, and we have to change the mindsets, first of all.
Global from day one, that's a very Baltic state of mind. We'll come back to that later. Andre, from a Romanian perspective, what are the where do we stand in Europe compared to the US and China?
Okay, it works. Well, I think Carlos mentioned the number one principle. In order for Europe to be able to compete with the US and China, first has to act as a single market, and we're still not doing that. We're just talking about PSD2, which is a step in fintech specifically. So I would say that. And the other part, and maybe that's something that, for example, like the large innovators, I'm going to talk about the US and Israel, which is a small market but is surprisingly innovative. I don't think Europe and the European Union should try to direct innovation. I think it should try to support it rather than direct it. And this is something that's been happening, and sort of have the mechanism to support innovation wherever it shows up.
Nemanja, your thoughts on this? What are the specificities of our European ecosystem?
Well, it's fragmented for sure, uneven and unbalanced. Compared to these two, also it's a bit slower due to two different things. It's very centralized in China, so it goes directly. In US, they're just faster. And the other thing is that I don't think that Europe is using its full potential. So there's plenty of room to grow and be fast and compete. So once, you know, and it's proven to work like that, because a couple of years ago, Europe was lagging behind in certain innovations, and you know, with a strong focus and effort, you know, Europe is now is leading the way in sustainable business, in environmental related businesses. So, you know, it showed that it can do it. So once, you know, it gets...
So Nemanja and maybe the others, if you look, because we have been talking about competing ecosystem, about how we are so slow compared to the US and stuff like that, but I want to hear success stories. When you look at blockchain, when you look at AI, when you look at deep tech, what are, if you have to name one success story, one business application that is totally tremendous, what would it be? That's a tough question. Yeah, agreed. You can pass on the mic if you need some thoughts.
So to get the question,
you are a success story at UiPath. Don't be modest. Don't be shy.
I wouldn't say so. What UiPath is doing is not necessarily like, I wouldn't call it like one app. It's a platform where pretty much anybody can build their own app. It's a platform for automation. It's about actually speeding things up, removing people from doing all the boring stuff, you know, in the back office, you know, on the machine, and actually letting them focus on where you can add value. So that is maybe, that's why this even UiPath is growing like that, because it's an infrastructure which in the enterprise software space is the fastest software company, fastest growing company ever, like, in the world. Just one more thing to add, maybe an anecdote, not necessarily on the positive, but maybe on the speed. Like in my previous role, I was in a company acquired by UiPath, a technology acquired. We applied once for an EU fund on innovation, and I said it yesterday as well, I touched on it. We started applying for it for an innovative technology in December of 2015. In March of this year, we got the okay that the documents are fine, not even the feasibility. Okay, I know it's not about joining the overall EU, but it's about speed. And the other part is, and I know a lot of the funding mechanism at the European level are about, you get this funding, but you have to keep the jobs for 3 years. And one of the rules of if you're being innovative is go, try, if you fail, but it's fine, but fail fast.
Success story, Carlos, what is your success story in AI, in blockchain, in our European ecosystem?
Well, I think that in blockchain, first I'm leading research and development, so we are mixing different technologies, and blockchain only is one of them, but we are really passionate about this. We are learning how to use blockchain technologies for efficiencies, and also we are learning how to use blockchain technologies for new business interaction. And for me, the main challenge that Europe could achieve is to try to create a data European marketplace. For me, this will be the European success story in the next year.
So if you had to ask a commissioner in the room for something to put on your Christmas list, that would be a European market for data.
Yes, of course, trusted iteration and data marketplace, a fair, trusted data marketplace.
We'll come back to that later on, because the regulatory challenges are tremendous. Egle, I mean, the Baltic states are success stories when it comes to deep tech.
So when it comes to blockchain, for sure, in 2017, Lithuanian startups raised more than 500 million euros for their projects. So I think that blockchain itself was quite a success story in Lithuania, because those startups raised 10 times more than in the last 10 years for any activity in startup sphere. So we have a lot of startups who just started, and we very much hope to see their success stories in the future. But we see that blockchain is used not only in fintech, but also in other sectors. And I believe that blockchain will be more successful in energy, in supply chain, and health sector than in fintech, actually, because fintech sector is already very competitive and very highly regulated. So
that's a key point, and I want to come back to that. It's very a lot of people are looking at blockchain and they are like, where are the concrete applications of blockchain? So my question is, where are the concrete applications of blockchain here in Europe? Carlos, I think that's a question for you. And Nemanja, I saw you smiling over there. You will get the mic.
For me, there is different application. One, you put an example, and I'm sure that you can talk about this, is how you can have trusted logs for identity, super important. The other for me is the digital asset. How we can start having digital asset and not digitalized assets. That is what we have now. And I think this will be one of the big applications of blockchain. But we need to think that we have blockchain and we have tokens. And you don't have tokens without blockchain. So.
Yeah, and is there a country or a specific ecosystem that you see booming in blockchain? Like, is there one blockchain city or one blockchain nation in Europe?
You have in Europe, for me, one of the cities that are hot, of course, Switzerland. They have different regulations.
In the European Union,
European Union.
Because otherwise Bogdan is going to come to me.
For me, Berlin is now making great things. Of course, Spain is really good, but Berlin, the fintech and the blockchain ecosystem and the tokens, combining the public blockchain and the private or federated one, they are creating really amazing things at this moment.
And so how do you build a blockchain-friendly ecosystem in Berlin or in Spain? Is this regulation? Is this capital? Is this talent? Is it a combination of all three?
Well, for me, it's a combination to create real projects in blockchain and not only interesting projects like underground ecosystem from meetups. You need the help from regulators and policymakers. And it's what is happening, I think, now in Germany, something different than in other countries in European Union.
Egle, is Lithuania a blockchain nation?
I think it's one of the blockchain nations in Europe. But what really helped Lithuanian ecosystem is our regulators' approach. Because especially when you start innovating and especially when you start working with new technologies, you need legal certainty. And it's very difficult to understand what regulation to apply and with what to comply. So our regulator had a very different approach. It had open door approach, which means that any company which had a business plan could come to our regulator and discuss the business plan with the regulator, and the regulator would advise which regulation to comply. And if that particular activity is falling under securities regulation, for example, or not. And it was very helpful for our companies because they felt that they can trust the regulator and the regulator would guide them and not fine them in the beginning of their activity. This is very important.
Nemanja, would you agree on that?
Well, I would get back to the practical use when we started this, because for example, GDPR has created a great line of products and companies that are using blockchain to solve this issue, and also there is a great use of this technology to have a single uploaded identity that can be used hypothetically all around Europe. So that's one thing. Also, there are other practical uses that, for example, European Central Bank is now evaluating distributed ledger to do the clearing and settlement. That's something very that's one-on-one for blockchain. So
just you're talking about the European Central Bank, but when we compare to China and to the US, and we saw that in these ecosystems in the US and in China, they are more reluctant to work on these technologies. Do you think that the regulators here in Europe are thinking ahead of things, or do you think they are reacting?
Well, I see that Europe is looking differently to the governance. So, the perspective for Chinese government is not the one, the perspective of European Union. Europe is more respective of, personal rights, transparency, and things like that. I don't know about United States. There is, as far as I've seen, a bigger initiative from the lobby groups and companies to change and act. They're organized in that manner. So European central bank is doing a good thing and running the run properly.
Carlos, I saw you nudging. If you had to compare the regulator approach in the US compared to China, compared to the European Union, would you say that here in the European Union we have understood some stuff before the others?
I think that the regulation in Europe is amazing, and let me explain. We need some kind of regulation to try to avoid systemic risk, and also to try to allow the people have at the right level of privacy. And we are not seeing this in China and US. In US, you can start something, and later you will make some kind of problems with the SEC or other. But we are trying to protect the citizens. I think it's something that we need to appreciate in Europe. We need to learn how to continue making this. Meanwhile, we can foster the innovation. And one example that we are applying in Spain, and it's super interesting, is Alastria. I recommend to you to take a look. We are more than 3,000 companies, also working with public institutions, trying to understand the use cases, working together, and it's working at this moment. So let's see what's happened.
That's really interesting. We talked a lot about countries, about nations. We are here at the European Union event, and I believe there are two ways of looking at things when it comes to building an ecosystem. Either you try to build a blockchain nation or an AI nation. You try to think small is beautiful, and I don't know, you go big or go home, or you think global from day one. That's, I would say, the Baltic approach. Or you see more and more people think that market size matters, and that we definitely need to build more a European ecosystem rather than a combination of national ecosystems. How would you deal with that? Would you try to build a combination of blockchain nations, or would you directly push the regulation in the European Parliament? Andre? Yeah, you have been very quiet, Andre. We need to hear you.
So I would, there's a trade-off. So on one hand, you want to centralize, but there's benefits to having more countries, because it's the power of trying a technology in a country. So then, each country can be a photographer trying. One country will try, like Georgia did, trying to put title management on blockchain, right? If that works, then it can be implemented. So I think that the focus going, like, on one hand, having the startup, which supports, and then having the scale up, I think is actually a very good approach. Now, how it gets implemented, obviously, there's a lot of work behind it, and I think it's being done. But I do believe we can leverage very well the fact that there are so many distinct entities, even for just trying out and then sharing best practices, or worse, right? So there's a trade-off there.
Egle?
I agree. I think that even when you look into the US, you see that we have different hubs, different ecosystems for different sectors. For example, in Silicon Valley, it's tech ecosystem. But then you look at finance or fintech, it's New York. And entertainment, it's LA. So I don't think that we need to do a huge ecosystem for blockchain in Europe. I think it's good to be specialized as well, but we should look at the market size, and market size really matters. It's not enough to be good in Lithuania or in Spain or in Germany. As I said in the beginning, it's very important to think global from day one. So we need to have regulations for startups to scale, for give them possibility to scale in Europe. Because what we see now, we see a very successful startup in Europe, but at some point, a startup has to raise capital. And usually they go to the US to raise the capital.
I want to emphasize on that point. Andrew McAfee once said that, a startup is, the head is technology, and there are two legs. You have to walk on two legs. The first leg is talent, and the second leg is capital. When you guys look at startups, when you look at tech companies, so you said that technology is here, but what about talent and capital? I want to turn to Andre. You guys raised amazingly well this year, 400 million in 2018. And I also noticed that in your top management, 2 of the people are American and 2 are Romanian. How did you manage to do that? How do you attract more talent into our deep tech ecosystem here in Europe? And how do you raise more capital I would say, outside of France and Germany and more like in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe?
The answer is very simple. Raise 400 million, 3 billion valuation, and the talent will come. But it's, I think it's the talent, but you know, the talent will follow with the technology. But I think it's very important when companies to think big. Like I think even the previous speaker was talking about, you have to think big, and you have to have. Although you start in whichever country, you have to always have like the global. If you want to have that company, you can want to have a small scale. But if you want to make it big, start with that vision in mind. Sell that vision. That will attract the talent. In UiPath, we've managed to attract, C-level executives from Microsoft, from any company in the world. We are attracting them because they understand the potential. By no means am I trying to say this is anybody can do. This company reached this because of a combination of a technology and an amazing amount of luck of reaching that product market fit.
When it comes to capital or when it comes to talent, don't you think there is a problem if like your top people come from the US and most of your capital was raised with US VC funds? Don't you think we should get more European capital into our startups and more European talents? Like when you hire your product managers, you were telling me that it's quite hard to find good talents.
Well, it's hard to find good technology, like technical talent all over the world. There's a huge need for technical talent. It's not whether you're in Silicon Valley or you're in Cluj in Romania or you're in Donetsk in Ukraine or you're in Shanghai. It's going to be all like there's variations, but it's really hard. Like there's no longer that's beautiful paradise or there's developers flocking and you find them and it is cheap. I think we have to get out of trying to find the cheaper destination. We have to really attract the talent by offering and working on really state-of-the-art technologies.
Carlos?
You say that you need talent, you need capital. It's all right. I think all the things that you need is data. Without data, you cannot train algorithms, and it's why the big digital giant is making now, and also China. But I think for the talents, and in the last 2 years with the ICOs movement, we see an interesting experiment because a lot of top talent from big companies and also big banks starting his own projects because they were raising money from the market in different ways. And they started this not only for the money, for the profit, for the upside, because the companies that they were starting they had different purpose. They have a different vision. So my point is you need culture, but you need to have a vision to offer something to this talent because the talent is scarcity and they can choose.
So you don't walk on 2 legs, you ride on 4 wheels. Okay, that's interesting. I want to come back to you, Carlos, because you're like the big corp in the room in this panel of entrepreneurs. And I found a very, very traumatic figure in a recent report. Large US corporations invest 6 times more in AI startups than their European counterparts. I hope this is not true for BBVA. I'm sure this is not. But we believe that we won't build a strong ecosystem if we don't get more collaborations between the large corporations and the startups. How are you achieving that at BBVA, and what would be your tips for your colleagues?
We started in BBVA, I think, more than 4 years ago, understanding that the importance of data and data science, and we start hiring new people, PhD, and also training internal people, reskilling people. Now what we are trying is combining the connection with the startups and also academia. Academia is super important because the top big machine learning or deep learning now is coming from academia, so you need to have this access. The challenge is, one more time, the VC in US are putting too much money, or much money than us, and also they can play. If you want to hire a data scientist or a postdoc, and you say, okay, we have this amount of data to play, and this guy has this amount of data.
Okay, so our panel is coming to an end. and we are approaching Christmas. So if you had one thing, just one thing to ask the regulators in the room in order to build a strong ecosystem here in Europe, what would it be? Just one thing. I understand that Carlos is going to talk about data, but Nemanja, do you want to start? Just one thing.
For me, and I think that Europe is working on this, is a European sandbox to try to experiment and test things.
Okay, so that was one thing. Very short, very punchy.
For
Thanks.
me, I think ICOs last year showed that we need another ways to raise capital, and there are our ways. So many companies raised money via ICOs, and they are now developing new technologies. I think a new approach should be to let STOs thrive in Europe. And for that, we really need to change regulation.
Can you explain what this is exactly and
So
how would you
STOs
change
is
regulation?
security token offerings. So basically, we need to change regulation to allow to list security tokens on public exchanges.
Nemanja?
I think that, well, my wish would be to the regulators to, concerning distributed ledger and identity management. That's the issue that's the first step for everything else. If you want to solve the issue of banking, insurance, medical records, once you create the standard for digital identity for European citizens, then you're on the fast track to regulate everything else.
Andre?
One wish. Can I have one wish? Is all these three wishes to come true? I don't know. I think probably my wish would be that at the European level to be able to achieve a very clear harmonization between policies at national and European level.
Okay. And now I'm going to, because that's the wish list, but now coming back to reality, I'm going to do exactly the same way around. How would you achieve that? Carlos, how do we build oceans of data here in Europe?
This is a good question. I think that trying to create, and now European started 2 weeks ago, trying to create a European trusted infrastructure. I never remember the name, but it is something similar to create a European operating system, and the next step could be European ocean, data ocean. So I think that we are in the right way at this moment.
And there is an elephant in the room when we come to deep tech. It's Brexit, because most of the Brexit, most of the deep tech ecosystem is actually relying a lot on London when it comes to capital, when it comes to talents, when it comes to startups. How do you think this is going to impact?
Well, the money used to move when they can grow, when the money can grow.
To Spain, for instance.
So I think I hope that the Brexit at the end does not happen. Let's see what is going to happen after what we read 2 days ago. But let's see, it's geopolitical, so I hope that UK will also...
Can we build a notion of data without the UK? That's my question.
When we can continue as Europe working together, as we have been working in the last year. I hope that with UK, but let's see. But I think that in any case we will do.
Okay, so there should be a special provision in the Brexit agreement on data flows. Okay, that's your point. Egle, how do you change your blockchain regulation?
Well, we don't need to change blockchain regulation. We just need to change some financial regulation. And I think there should be willingness both from the policymakers and from the stakeholders to sit down and find the best way to do that. And if there is willingness, I think we can find the right answers for that.
But you've worked for the Lithuanian presidency when they were running the European Council, and you've seen that behind the stage it's not that easy. So
Sure. Sure.
How can we achieve that in a short
There are a lot of
frame?
stakeholders, but I think if member states and the Commission understands that we need to find the ways to help European startups to raise capital, and this is one of the opportunities for Europe actually to help them to raise capital via STOs, security token offerings. This is actually one of the ways for Europe to lead this industry. So I think there should be willingness from both member states and the Commission to sit down and find the ways.
You guys have been extremely polite and haven't been interfering with each other, but I know that Andre is kind of skeptic when it comes to cryptocurrencies. You guys didn't do an ICO, you went to straight VC firms. Why? And do you think Egle is totally right in thinking that STO is really the way for more capital in our ecosystem?
Well,
Don't fight.
I think we went the VC route because we had VCs fighting to finance us. So it's very important. I think ICOs are. My skepticism comes from really having trouble on the cryptocurrency rather than ICO, like grasping the value of it, especially the Bitcoin craze and everything else. That was discussion between us. No, but I think ICO is is the next step in it's a crowdfunding. Maybe it actually can help a lot and help companies, especially at the early stage. The value of raising capital. On one hand, you need the capital, but it's really important, especially when you start growing, who your investors are. So you're not only bringing, like UiPath not only brought 225 million in the last round, it brought Capital G, the investment out of Google and Sequoia Partners, which is one of the leading VC firms, in its board with all their strategic contacts and their network. So this is you bring not only money, but you bring a lot of expertise at the table, and which eventually will also follow through by bringing people because they see who your board is.
Okay, and Nemanja, how do you make your dream come true?
Well, I guess this needs to be centralized decision, and the standards needs to be set, and this standard should be technical standard, legal standard, and functional standard in order to work. So we skip, so the Europe can be fast in deciding, because the whole market is going very fast. So if we leave it to individual countries to decide what technology, how should be done, I think it would be too late. And I guess the most important thing right now is to make this single market, European single market, functional, because 500 million people in the market, and you're not using it. That's something that it's like the biggest asset that Europe is not using. So everything as faster as you move to create it, to integrate it, you are more likely to better run this global game in innovation.
Thanks a lot. And there is one final question. We talked a lot about what we are doing, what we are seeing in the market, about the actual status of our European ecosystem. But let's talk just about the future. And we hear all the buzzwords on AI, blockchain, big data, cloud computing, and stuff like that. My question would be, what is the next buzzword in our ecosystem, in our deep tech ecosystem? What is to you, over the next 5 years, the most promising technology that you see really reshaping the deep tech ecosystem? Is that quantum computing? Is that... Please show us our knowledge on deep tech.
Well, I don't see a particular technology, but the buzzword related to technology and the future of Europe would be education and place to run your business. Because as far as we've seen, the tech and innovation guys are picky guys, and they want to feel comfortable where they live. So we have a huge, I know a lot of companies that are moving out of Silicon Valley since, Trump era and the political situation there, and they feel more comfortable in Europe, coming to Berlin, coming to Switzerland. So I think that's the next buzzword, the environment, the ecosystem, European ecosystem. You have so many different and beautiful places to live. You have affordable and good education that you don't get somewhere else in the world, and this multicultural and open approach. So I think that's the good ground for any future development.
Andre, when you look at robotics and what you guys are developing at UiPath, what is the next buzzword? What is the next technology that is really reshaping the ecosystem?
I'm not going to say a buzzword, but I will say I think it's education, and particularly what I mean is that this will really change the way we think. To democratize technology and to spread the benefits of technology beyond the small circle of the developers that everybody is trying to find. So that means taking technology down. And the AI has a huge part in this. They will all add up, because even in our platform, right, it's a platform that an 11-year-old can program a robot. Okay. That's what it is. So you can, and this is how you can actually bring people into the digital age rather than keep them, out of it and continue voting Brexits and Trumps and everything.
So not a new technology, but a new way of doing
democratization of the technology.
Okay, distributing technology. Carlos?
For me, the next buzzword, and we are seeing that, or seeing this, is quantum computing. We are going to start seeing a lot of quantum computing experts. For me, the next tech is going to be, as the same happened, I think, 6 years ago, with the combination of location, mobile, cloud. We are going to see the importance of the convergence of AI, blockchain, and other technologies. But I think that this is going to be, for me, the maturity of this. But the next big things, I think, is how we are going to combine biology with technology, with economic.
Thanks a lot, Carlos.
Carlos
Apparently
stole my answer.
He cheated. That's bad.
So I really agree with you, with Carlos, and I think that combination of technologies is the most important. So we cannot isolate just AI or blockchain or quantum computing. Everything is important if you want to build great products.
Well, sounds like a conclusion word, actually. I want you guys to give them a big round of applause, because they did a fantastic job. Thanks a lot. And thank you very much. And I think this panel was totally amazing, because we keep talking a lot about ecosystem and ecosystem and ecosystem, but we forget that in order to have an ecosystem, you need to have biodiversity. And we had amazing biodiversity here, with all countries in Europe, a large corporate, someone who has worked with government, entrepreneurs, and that is the strength of our European ecosystem. Thanks a lot, guys.
So, thank you so much. Just wanted to close the session. So I think we heard a lot about the opportunities, the challenges, but one thing is for sure, disruptive technologies are changing our lives, changing society, changing the economy, and changing our also people. In the last session we said it's about the citizens and the issue about democratizing technology. So I think we should never forget that what it's all about is to improve the well-being and living conditions of our citizens. Thank you very much.